Namaskaram and greetings to Srimati Deepa Bhaskaran Salem ji, and it's such a joy to have with us in hand your book Adideva 25 Legends Behind His 25 Names. So, out of curiosity, Deepa ji, why did you choose 25 names?
This is not, it was not planned as when I started out. I had several stories, there were several meditations on Shiva that I had been writing about for a while and sharing it on my blog as well as, my Facebook page. But, when I thought of putting it together as a book, I got some feedback from several scholars, including Nilesh ji, that it's good idea to have a kind of a limit. Otherwise, I will be writing about this forever without anything to show for it. So he said, you all writers have this urge to keep going on and on and on. We seem like it's never perfect, it's never enough. So he suggested to like have a boundary so that you work towards it and then you say, okay, I'm done. So from that perspective, I wanted to pick a number. Then when I came to the stories, I felt even though Shiva has thousands of names, or there is the Shiva Sahasranama itself, there are many, many, many names. I had a few criteria for picking these 25 stories, which is it has to be a very, very interesting story to tell. Like it's a very dramatic story packed with emotions. But at the same time, it also has a certain something to insight that it gives, right? Either a Vedantic insight or a Adhyatmic insight that give as part of the story, which makes it a good instrument for meditation. So it's a good kind of a story that you can meditate on. Those were two criteria, and the third is that there is substantial proof in the Shiva Purana or the Skanda Purana. So I wanted it to have a Shastra backing and not something that has been made up. That said, some of them are also Sthala Puranas. So there are kind of three aspects to it. So yeah, the dramatic story, something that you can take out of a meditation and then definitely has a scholarly backing. All names are wonderful. Some of the names are just about his gunas, right? Like if you say like Karunanidhi or Kripanidhi, it's a fantastic name, but there is no story attached to it. So that's really where it came from.
Yeah, it's a lovely read. And you mentioned that you're also Shiva Bhakt and do his Upasana. So we know Shiva through his myriad forms, and you quote the Mahimna Stotram where Gandharva Pashupadanta asserts that even Saraswati cannot succeed in describing him. So, what, according to you, is the Shiva that we have to take away from this?
In the introduction I write, and I can read it if you wish, but it's really Shiva is just such a magical personality in my view, because and if I can just read the words from my introduction to Shiva, right? He is formless. Obviously we say Shiva is Brahman, the Brahma Tattvam, but he is also at the same time takes these extreme forms, extreme stillness and extreme energy, extreme austerity and extreme passion, extreme anger and extreme compassion. And he straddles all since he's beyond all. And he's at the same time, all of us know these, he's at the same time, he's the celibate destroyer of Kama, but he's also the romantic Kameshwara, who is wooing Parvati. He is the primitive hunter Kirata, but he's also the evolved Dakshinamurti. He dwells in the cemetery, Shmashana, but he's also in the mesmerizing Kailasha. He's the wrathful Veerabhadra, but he's also the benevolent Sadashiva, Bholenath, we call him. He's the terrifying Kapali, some forms are scary, but he's also the captivating Sundareshwara. Obviously he's always portrayed with his goblins, Bhuta Preta, but he's also with the beautiful Uma, who's Tripura Sundari. And then finally he's the eternally still linga, but he's also depicted as this dynamic Nataraja Tattva, right? So you see this, like for me it was always about how is this possible. It's just like the contrasting thing, it's so contradictory in every way. And then you realize as you go that it's because, by the way, even in Vedanta, Ishvara is not this just benevolent cute little object, right? Ishvara encompasses everything, all emotions, all powers, everything that's possible in the world is within Ishvara, right? In fact, we say there is this word that I heard, it's called kartum shakyam, akartum shakyam, anyeta kartum shakyam. Everything that we do today, every power today, every power that is potentially possible in the universe is Ishvara. And I think Shiva's various forms demonstrate that. I mean, all Bhagwans, obviously we have, even in Devi, we have Narasimha, we have, of course, the cute little Krishna, but Shiva specifically, I feel, portrays these extremes in very, very powerful ways. But in the middle of all of that, he's still eternal, the monastic, ascetic, the Shivalinga kind of a form. So I've always been fascinated by Shiva from childhood, and as growing up in Tamil Nadu, I visited a lot of temples and heard about the stories. But I would say for the last 10 years or so, I kind of went back to reading the Shiva Purana and the Skanda Purana, and even like all Puranas have sections on Shiva Brahmanda Purana. So that's where this interest in going back to the sources came, and I started doing more, not just reading on Shiva, but also doing more everyday worship, Abhishekam on Mondays, Somvar Abhisheka, and so on. So it is just, I would say he has brought me to him in closer and closer, is what I would say. Like all people who are like, how did I get this? I don't know. I think he brings us to him. So that's what I feel.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, but wonderful that we're having this conversation in the month of Shravana, and with him being worshipped a lot during this period. And every form of his is also includes his divine family. It's almost in every aspect we have one member of the family. So you have quoted Aruna Gurudhar, a Tamil poet of the 15th century, who uses Ganapati in his very first verse, is praising Ganapati. So what is you have included a lot of beautiful verses by different rishis and poets, and which really brings a local flavor to the form that you have chosen. So could you tell us more about this first verse and the poetry?
So yeah, there are interests. Like I said earlier, I have relied not just on the Shiva Purana, Skanda Purana, Linga Purana, but I also there is a wealth of treasure in India which is around the Sthala Puranas, right? Many, not every, but a ton of ancient temples have associated with them some Purana or some Mahatmya, which is some divine miracle happened here, or there was some connection there, or some great rishi prayed to Bhagwan and got something. There's always these connections that are very, very powerful. I think I feel that's what make that temple sacred in a way, because it's not just of course there's a prana pratishtha, but there is a connection with something miraculous that happened there, whether it's Kamakhya or Vaishno Devi or obviously Kashi and every temple. So when you look at that, for some reason, they are all very localized. Only the local people will know about that Sthala Purana usually, unless the big temples sometimes we know. But a majority of times, we don't know about these Sthala Puranas. Rarely there is a mention of the Sthala Purana in the Purana itself. For example, Skanda Purana has a whole lot of chapters or khandas on various thalas, and it goes into all the detail. Obviously Rameshwaram is one thing I took from there, but there are many Sthala Puranas that are missing from this corpus of Puranas, right? So one of these things is this Ganesha thing that we have, which is the story, obviously the Tripurantaka story. So Shiva goes and he raises this, he's asked to shoot these 3 cities and with one arrow at a certain specific time. So everybody comes together, the chariot, and Brahmaji is the chariot. So all of this come together. I don't want to go into the story. But the cute little addition to that, which is in this particular Acharapakam temple in Tamil Nadu, is that, Shiva himself is the one who said Ganesha has to be prayed to before any task is started, right? You remember that old story where, after this Ganesha fight and, the elephant head is given, the Shiva blesses him that you will be the Mula, first Prathameshwara, right? So you will be the first prayed to. But the story in Acharapakam is cute because Shiva starts sitting on the chariot, and they are about to take off, or Brahma is about to drive, but the chariot doesn't move. So everybody is like, what happened? This is a fantastic chariot. It's created by Vishwakarma himself. Brahmaji is the charioteer. All the devas are the horses. How is possible that this chariot doesn't move? And then Shiva himself divines that it is actually Ganesha who's preventing us from going. The axle, he's holding the axle, achara, that's the Tamil word for axle. And then he realizes, and I've made a little fun thing where, Shiva goes into a huge laughter because he realizes this, and the Deva's like, why is he laughing now? And he says, it's because I'm the one who promised Ganesha that he would be worshipped before any activity, but I myself forgot. So let's do that, right? Now, this cute addition to the Tripurantaka story is very localized. It is only in that Acharapakam story. But Arunagirinathar was a great Tamil poet, and he was wandering around many temples in Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Sri Lanka, and he wrote a lot. And then he goes to this particular story, and he has taken that particular line. So obviously, his magnum opus is this Tripugar, which is a series of amazing verses on Kartikeya. But obviously, the first verse has to be on Ganesha, and that's where he embeds this little anecdote. As just, Acha the Podi Seda Adidira. It's like you destroyed the axle of the great Mahadeva, Ganesha. And so it's a cute story. And similarly, there are such stories strewn across India. I've done a very small part of them. But I'm sure if we keep digging into it, into the Sthala Puranas, their connection to the Puranas, I think we'll dig a lot more into the heritage that we have in India.
Sure. Then we have the story of Veerabhadra, and he has been worshipped across India by different sects, like including Buddhists, and also the Aghoris worship him as Bhairava in his form. So in again we have the localized worship as Ayanars or the Bijat Maharaj or the Karupana Samis, as you have mentioned. So
Yeah.
this Rupam of his was spawned by Sati's death. So the dispassionate ascetic suddenly becomes this extremely emotional version of himself.
Yes.
So what does this say about the relationship between him and Sati?
Yeah, I think again, this is so beautiful, and I feel if you just read it at a surface level, like especially with a very non-Indic lens, you will find all of this very gory, and what is this? Why is he reacting like this to his wife's killing? And obviously, it's horrible, but it does seem extreme. But that is, I think, Shiva's nature. I think he will be like I think you have to just accept him as he is, because he would be so compassionate to the point where he'll hurt himself, like in the Bhasmasara episode, whereas he will be very angry. That apart, his emotional nature is that he will straddle all of it, but in the middle of it, his inner nature is very still, right? So that is from a Vedantic standpoint, and that's for us too. Like the Gita says, you can do all of this activity, but in the middle of it, like Pashyan, Shunvan, Sprishan, Jigran, Krishna says, Unmishan, Nimishan, Napi, all of this you do, but in the middle of all that, remember, you are that still Brahman, right? So that is one lesson we can draw from it. But at a Puranic level or even a Tattva level, Shiva Shakti is inseparable. Like there is no way you can, like there's two sides of the same coin, if you will, or there is a beautiful definition I heard from Sri Ramanacharya Tirtha Swamiji, which is, if you open your eyes, it's Shakti. If you close your eyes, it's Shiva. It's the same thing. It's the same tattva. When you open your eyes, you see the world, it is Shakti. When you close your eyes, the same thing is the Brahman or the Adhara behind it, right? So you, in a sense, you cannot separate them. Anybody who tries to separate, it causes, I think, cataclysmic events in the world, because that's really what it is. Daksha, in a sense, he has done that. Even otherwise, there are some cute little stories, of course. So Ardhanari form also comes as a result of that, for people to understand that you cannot separate them, right? So that is this connection at a adhyatmic sense. But as a man, as a husband, he is like, she is his, everything, right? So you also see that connection between them at various levels. So, like, definitely at the Vedantic level, and then more of a tattva level, and then at a kind of a very emotional level also. They are so close to each other. So that obviously you see that his Raudra manifestation. So he's able to just pull off, and thankfully he himself doesn't do that. He pulls off a hair and he throws it on the floor, and off comes Veerabhadra and Bhadrakali. And also I feel it's there is a certain, and for Hindus, right, we like, there are ugra forms for us. We don't believe in a form that's only all passive, Kali or Narasimha or Veerabhadra, even different forms of Kali across, like I said earlier, just like Veerabhadra is manifested in different forms across India, same thing you see in Kali, right, in Durga as Mariamman, or Shitala Devi, or all these ugra forms. For us, that is it also is benevolence. The appearance is ugra or very, very scary, but underlying that is compassion. So I think, and in fact, not just compassion to the innocent, even compassion to the asuras, because by killing them, they are actually getting them a new birth, and they go through this process. So this Veerabhadra form, that is why I think across India we see that manifestation. And the very popular movie Kantara, right, and in a way Panjuruli also, that is a form, is a kind of an element of that form. Across India we see these ugra forms, and it also makes us. There is a danger in always seeing the skewed forms of Bhagwan. Then you don't see that, hey, he is the universe, it contains everything. Then you see a volcano erupting, that is Bhagwan, because Bhagwan in a ugra form in nature. So I feel Hinduism is much more it pushes us to see the entire world as it is, and not look for like just these technicolor beautiful forms of Bhagwan.
Yeah. You've also quoted the first opening verse of the Saundarya Lahari. And I was listening to a talk where Sri M, he talks about how Adi Shankaracharya, although he was an Advaitin,
Mhm.
he felt so close to the Shakti form that he penned the second half of the Saundarya Lahari, the Shringara Lahari.
Yes.
So, what is it about Shringara that we can get from this Shakti element? And any telling of stories of Shiva, can we leave out that aspect?
Um, I don't think you can. I mean, there are some stories where it is very, very obvious, like it's very overt, like in obviously the Uma Maheshwara story. And there are other stories where he wants there is beauty in the world, and even there have been a question in the past and from my children. You say Lalita Maha Tripura Sundari, she is most beautiful in all the three worlds, but that's only us saying that, right? People in Hindus, we say that. What about other people? That's not the concept. The concept is, wherever there is, you see beauty, that is because of Mata, right? Like, she is the embodiment of beauty that manifests in everything beautiful in the universe. Not just her form. Yes, her form is very beautiful, but the capacity to see beauty everywhere, that is what she gives. In a way, that's what this thing is about. But in the case of Shiva, yes, he's highly celibate, and the Uma Maheshwara, I think, and frankly, I would also highly encourage people to either read my book, the Uma Maheshwara, or go back to the Shiva Purana to read it, because it goes through that whole journey. Initially, Shiva says that, hey, I don't care about beauty and all of that, because I'm an ascetic, and I in fact don't want any girl to be near me, serving me when Parvati comes to serve him. But Parvati actually has a very interesting like, these are things that get missed out in the diluted version that we all hear, right? In fact, even in Vivek Debroy in his introduction to most of his Purana works, he says Puranas have obviously they've become part of the Indian heritage, right? Because nobody knows Vedas and all. Let's be honest, the common person is not dealing with anything from the Vedas. Common person, common Hindu knows more Purana stories than anything. Even though we keep saying we are from Vedic culture, how many people really know about the Vedic culture, or what's in the Vedas? None of us, very few of us know it. but most people do know the Puranas because they've become so part of popular culture. Everybody, I mean, I'm guaranteeing most majority of people do know the Shiva Parvati Vivaha story, right, in some form. Yes, that's fantastic. But the downside is that it's been so diluted that it's been all the good elements have been, in a way, not in popular culture. Similar with Ramayana or anything, right? All the nuances get dropped off and it goes into the mass consciousness. But in this case, Parvati has a very interesting conversation with him. When Shiva says, "No, I don't want any Prakriti. I'm just going to meditate. I don't want Prakriti." And she has a very intelligent conversation with Shiva, and she says, "How can you say that? Because how can you even meditate without Prakriti? The very fact you're doing something means you're in Prakriti." Anyway, long story short, the story later goes that Shiva, obviously Parvati wants to marry him, but he's in this very horrific form, right? Like he's in snakes and bhasma and jata and everything. He's not like a typical bridegroom. Parvati is fine, but I think the journey of her mother Meena is goes. We have heard about it mildly in when the common narrative, but it's a very intense narrative in the Shiva Purana. So she initially she is so against it. What kind of a and initially it does seem like she's enamored of her own daughter's beauty. So all of us, moms, we all love our children. We glorify them. We think they're very cute and very pretty, and all of us do that. But the Purana narrates her, and that's what I've tried to portray. Purana says she is so mesmerized with her daughter's beauty because she is Ma Tripura Sundari herself, born as Parvati. So she is, oh, my daughter is so beautiful, daughter is so beautiful. And suddenly my daughter is picking this horrific looking groom. So the mother, as a mother, she's not able to accept it. And then the journey of Shiva goes, he keeps scaring her. He doesn't show his beautiful form. He keeps showing Meena his horrific form again and again and again. And then finally, during the wedding procession is where, she begs him to show him his true form. And the story is so beautiful. Apparently, he allows the Saptamatrikas to dress him. And they all like make his snake become a garland. They make his third eye become some kind of a jewel, and his skin, tiger elephant skin becomes like silken garments and all of that. And he shows her. So the Shringara is element is very much there in that. Obviously, later Ardhanari. Ardhanari, I feel, is not so much of a Shringara rasa, but it's really showing their oneness. But yeah, he is, and later in another story where it's not even Shringara, it goes on erotica, is Bhikshatana, where he intentionally comes as a very, very handsome naked youth, and he attracts the Rishi Patnis away from, So there is Shringara Rasa there as well. And then there are episodes where he and Mohini, Mohini comes to help him with the Bhasmasura. So she and he, and that's their union is Ayyappa. Again, if we make the mistake of thinking of them as humans, we'll it's not right, because they are capable of becoming anything. People, these leftists sometimes say that, oh, Vishnu became Mohini, so it should be okay to be trans. That's a different discussion. I don't want to get into that. But Bhagavan also became Kurma Avatara and Varaha Avatara. Can we do that? So it's not the same thing. Bhagavan can become anything: man, woman, animal, insect, whatever he can become. So from that standpoint, with those episodes with Mohini also represent the Shringara Rasa. That's what I would say, but yeah, I'm sure there's a lot more to dig in.
Yeah. What about the story of Murti and you quote again Bhaja Govindam, where it says whether in yoga or bhoga, whether in company or alone, for one whose mind revels in Brahman, it is bliss and only bliss. So, but the Bhaja Govindam is it used to in Shiva narratives?
That message that Adi Shankar, sorry, that message that Adi Shankaracharya gives in the Bhaja Govindam, right? That is the constant narrative through many Vedantic texts. Like I said earlier, in Gita also we have this, Pashyan, Shrinvan, Sprishan, Gridnan, Ashnan, Gachan, Spashan. So whatever you do, Pralapan Visrajan, whatever you do, whatever activities you're doing through the day, in the middle of that, you remember that you're Brahman. That is a constant narrative in many of the Vedantic texts. So that is what Adi Shankaracharya says in Bhajagovindam, Yogaratova, Bhogaratova, Sangaratova, Sangavihinaha, Yadyat Brahmani Ramate Chittam, Nandati, Nandati, Nandati eva, right? Whether you are enjoying or sick or partying or not partying, if you remember that you're Brahman, you will, you're always in bliss, right? So this is the message of the Bhajagovindam. Interestingly, this is the story that the story of Dakshinamurti shows. Again, it does seem like that story, there is a slight mention of it in the Guru Gita or Sutta Samhita. This Dakshinamurti story that I've written in the book, there is a mention of it in Sutta Samhita, but it doesn't seem to have got into popular culture. It is known in Tamil Nadu where I grew up, though. So that is where the story comes, where the Sanak Kumaras, they want to get this knowledge. They go to, then they are looking for a guru. So they are already very evolved because they are obviously Sanat Kumaras, but they want to get the highest knowledge. They are still not able to internalize that, Brahmanyana. So first they go to their father, but their father is enjoying music with Saraswati, it's like, what is this? He shouldn't be enjoying music. Then they go to Vishnu, where he's reclining on the couch and Mahalakshmi is like massaging his feet, and they're like, how can a evolved person be, in this creature comforts, it's sleeping and having his leg massaged? So this is not the right guru. Then they go to Shiva and they are even more shocked because Shiva is actually with Parvati on his lap. He's, like they're having a nice time together and they're shocked. I'm like, how can Shiva, who is supposedly ascetic, how is he doing this? And then they say this is not working and they go back to wherever they were meditating. And then Shiva realizes that they are mistaken, because true knowledge is not about sitting quietly with doing nothing and away from the world alone is not true knowledge. That works for some people, but true knowledge is realizing the reality of the universe, which is Brahman, and realizing everything we do as mithya, as a temporary illusory process, and not getting caught up in it. So he wants to teach them that lesson, and that's why he goes. Because they need a guru they have a certain concept of a guru, that he has to be like a celibate and that kind of thing. So he takes the form of Dakshinamurti and sits there, and he makes this Sachin Mudra, which is showing that the waking dream and deep sleep state, you may be doing all of these things or the gunas, but Jivatma Paramatma Aikya, right? So you are actually that, no matter whether you're Bhogaratova or Yogaratova, Sangaratova. So I think it's a very probably one of the most adhyatmic stories, right? Like more spiritual stories in the book, which is, I think, again, very, very sweet because you can talk to them. Even children can understand this, right? Even children can understand when you say this through a story, that, hey, listen, even though Vishnu was doing this, Brahma was doing this, Shiva was doing this, underlying that they're all Brahman. They had the knowledge, so they could do everything and not be caught up in it. So, yeah.
So maybe as a last question, can you tell us about the difference between the portrayal, the worship, and the place of Shaivite worship in South and North India?
If I'm not mistaken, there was some kind of a research that came out a few years back. I think Shiva is the most worshipped across India, is the data that I remember getting. I think in terms of popularity, he's definitely out there. In terms of worship, like I mentioned earlier about the Sthala Puranas, I really feel once upon a time, many of the temples of the north as well would have had these Sthala Puranas associated with them. Even the ones that are remaining, we see them, right? Like whether it's Amarnath or obviously Kashi, we see that they are all connected to many of the Dwadasha Jyotirlingas. There are Sthala Puranas associated with them, obviously, which are from the Koti Rudra Samhita itself, from the Shiva Purana. I feel there must have been a lot more in terms of Shiva worship. What maybe we are seeing more of is in the north, and again, we can't generalize. In the south, there's still more of the Vedic worship, the Smartha Parampara, right? So there's a more of a traditional worship, the Ashtotrams and the Rudram Parayana and those kind of things. And in the north, I think there's a lot more, I feel, of really going back to the roots of Shiva, that maybe influenced by the Naga sadhus, the Aghori traditions, and so on. There's definitely more of that. I mean, we do have the Siddha parampara in the south, like the Tamil Siddhas who are also in that form. So I think I really don't want to make a judgment on which is more, which is less. But you see the range, with Adi Shankara also, he did a lot of the Samayachara, right? So Samayachara basically is that you don't have to do like Bali, or you don't have to do these extreme practices. Those who are doing it, fine. But even without that, you can do more manasa, the mental conception of Shiva, as Mrityunjaya, for example. In fact, even I sometimes do like Mrityunjaya mantra. When you do, it's also like, I imagine, like Manikarnika Ghat. There is where you see that there's no need to shy away from it. Death is part of the Shiva, kind of one of the upasana mechanisms also. So I think Samayachara, which is more of a mental concept, is what many of us follow. But we have this thriving tradition of this Kolachara or Vamachara also with Shiva, where people worship in the cremation ground, or they do some extreme practices. Definitely, I think Shiva is like I said, spans the whole spectrum. He's Vaidika and very, very orthodox, but he's also for the extreme. We have. I'm sure you know about this Kannappa, who Nayanar, who is like, he was a hunter, and he worshipped Shiva by offering him meat, because that's what he knew. He doesn't know anything else. He offered meat to Shiva, and he offered alcohol to Shiva, and he showed his bhakti when Shiva's eyes were dripping with blood. He replaced it with his eyes. He's so great that Adi Shankara mentions him. So Adi Shankara, obviously did not do any such kind of worship, he glorifies Kannappa as one of the greatest bhaktas. So I wouldn't like to, I think Shiva does span a wide range of worshippers, from the very orthodox, Vaidikas, to all the way to, people who are want to worship in any way they want to. So I think he's very all encompassing in that way.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And maybe if you could just tell us lastly about how your work with parenting, Hindu parenting, and how we can bring this book to younger audiences, and also for parents to be able to pass on this heritage to children.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm doing a few things. One, I do some workshops for children every 6 months or so, mostly for older, like teens, 13 and above. And the way we do it is like two sessions, where the first section is really about why should you even be a Hindu in today's terms, and it's done using more of their language. Like, these are the problems that are facing the world. Hinduism is about using our knowledge to live a good life now, not so much about what happens after death, but really like, how can you use this rare human life productively. So that's the first part. And the second part is all of this, tackling these outside narratives that we have, unfortunately, that children often fall a prey to, whether it's caste or women, or whatever our positions on superstition or whatever it is. So there are two sections which have been very well taken, and I'm hoping to convert that into a book soon, but it's still in progress. But so that if anybody is interested, you can sign up at this website called lifethehinduway.wordpress.com. So LIFE, the Hindu way. Then I have for younger audiences. So there was a lot of requests for younger audiences as well, but I don't have the time for it. So instead, we have published a book. It's called Airavata Activity Book. So Airavata, like Indra's elephant. You can check it out on Amazon. It is in the US, but it's coming to India very soon. So it'll have 2 volumes of activities for children, and making them think about everything. For example, there'll be a chapter on Gita, but it's not just the Gita. It'll ask them to respond to a question like, what would you do if such a situation happened, and how it ties to the Gita. For Shiva, for example, it'll talk about all the symbology of Shiva and a story about Shiva. There'll also be little games, because it's meant for the younger age group, like 6 to 12. So it has little games like hidden figures or scramble the words or word search. So Airavata Dharma activity book, 2 volumes. The first volume is available in US, but both the volumes will be coming out in India hopefully in a couple of months. But with respect to this book, I intentionally wrote it to straddle like teenagers as well as adults, because I didn't like that was a choice I made, because I could have gone very scholarly and put a lot of more and more, and it was originally like that. It had a lot of stotrams and a lot of symbolisms, brought in a lot of Vedanta. But even some adults struggle because they don't have a backing in it. So I trying to keep it a little fun, easy to read, but at the same time have something for them to meditate on. For example, a child told me that she does face jealousy. She has jealousy, like always this FOMO, as the younger
Yeah.
generation talks about. I'm missing out on something. So she said, I started using Kirata, because in Kirata, I end by saying that Kirata don't just, and Adi Shankara says this, don't just go and hunt animals, hunt the animals in my heart also, in my mind, jealousy and pride and anger. And she says, auntie, whenever I feel jealous, I'm trying to use that meditation and say, oh my God, I'm feeling jealous. So Bhagavan, remove that jealousy from me. Let me accept whatever I am, content with what I have. So I think hopefully children, and I'm also suggesting to the readers not just to read it once and forget about it. It's not about the story. I hope the success for me or my satisfaction will come if people are using it as a means of meditation and taking out something from it, either a value or a concept of Vedanta from the book. But if you have any other suggestions, I would love to hear from you. So I'm very active on Facebook, and I would love to hear about any feedback you have, and would consider it for my future books as well. Thank you.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much for this lovely conversation, Deepaji. It was
Thank you.
wonderful reading the book, covering the 25 stories as well as speaking to you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity, and thanks to all of you for watching. Guru Bhyo Namaha.